Hey there everyone, this is your pal Invader, and welcome to my review for Halo Infinite. I played this on the Xbox Series X, but it's also available for the Xbox One and PC. The game costs about $79.99 Canadian, and it's also available through Xbox Game Pass. I played it digitally through Xbox Game Pass, but I also managed to snag a copy of the limited edition physical steelbook. As I'm sure a few of you are aware, the Halo franchise has always held a special place in my heart. I've always been enamored with the special combination of things that make Halo, well, Halo. As time has gone on, the series has went through some changes. Some good and others, well, very muddled and confusing to the fanbase. Well, 343 Industries, the caretakers of the Halo franchise, have went back to the drawing board of sorts, and have done a soft reboot to the series, trying to correct mistakes and set the franchise on a more focused path. In some ways, I have to be lenient towards 343. When you're dealing with an already established franchise, there's always going to be set expectations, especially to one of the largest video game franchises around. And no matter what way you take it, a chunk of the fan base isn't going to be happy. It's hard to please everyone, and it's been a struggle for 343 Industries to balance the old with the new with Halo 4 and Halo 5 Guardians. And many wondered where they'd take the next installment. But hey, maybe third time's a charm for the studio, right? Before I do my deep dive, I need to preface this by saying that yes, I do realize that some stuff got delayed and won't be available until, well, sometime deep into 2022. Forge, co-op campaign, and the like. But really, I can only review what's in front of me, what I'm able to play, and just judge it accordingly to that. However, what I don't approve of is very last minute and only a few days away from launch kind of notices, such as not being able to preload the game until its launch date. That's supposed to be a big plus for digital games and Xbox Game Pass, but for some reason that was only available to install on its launch date. Just kind of a bizarre situation there. As well, I may give out a few campaign spoilers, so be aware before heading onward. So is Halo Infinite a worthy iteration to the Halo franchise? Or is it something that tugs on the heartstrings of nostalgia just to rake in the old fans? Well, grab your game fuel and Cheetos, my trigger-happy couch potatoes, as I cover Halo Infinite. The story takes place sometime after the end of Halo 5. The Created, a group of artificial intelligences made by mankind, have rebelled against the UNSC. Led by Cortana, these forces took control of ancient Forerunner constructs known as Guardians to subdue the sentient species of the galaxy to their whim. Fast forward a few months and things aren't going exactly to plan for the Created. The Banished, led by Atriox, tell Cortana to basically screw off and are on a mission to Zeta Halo. As well, UNSC forces led by the Infinity travel to Zeta Halo. There's a convergence of these forces that doesn't end well for the UNSC. The Infinity is quickly taken out by the Banished, and Atriox subdues the Master Chief, throwing him into the reaches of space. 6 months later, a pilot discovers the Master Chief floating out in space and revives him. Hesitant, the pilot takes Master Chief down to Zeta Halo to retrieve the weapon, an AI set to imitate, capture, and delete Cortana. The weapon is surprised that she is still around, since she was successful in her mission, but she is still stuck around. The Master Chief decides to keep her around and retrieve her to take her along for the journey. Zeta Halo is now controlled by the Banished, led by Atriox's Lieutenant Escharum. Atriox has been missing since the encounter on the Infinity, and the Banished are now searching for something on the ring. While trekking through the forests and mountains of Zeta Halo, Master Chief encounters scattered UNSC forces, rallying them to assault Banished installments and fortifications. Eventually, the Chief traverses into Forerunner structures and encounters a Monitor by the name of Despondent Pyre, the caretaker of Zeta Halo. The Monitor tries to warn the Master Chief about the dangers hidden away on Zeta Halo, but then gets destroyed by a brand new enemy. A force that terrified the Forerunners so much they locked up this species in confinement for eons. The Harbinger, a member of said species, states that she's working with the Banished and plans to free the rest of her species imprisoned on the ring. And over the course of the campaign, Master Chief and the weapon have to overcome many obstacles along their journey, whether that be the Banished, the new alien race, the Endless, and even Forerunner Sentinels. I won't go into anything more story related, but I can tell you that it's worth your time investing in it. It does a good job of correcting past mistakes while putting forth some new prospects for the future. The pilot turns out to be a very relatable character. It's made clear that he misses his family and he's been away from them for quite some time. He wants to leave for home ASAP and avoid any enemies along the way. He's been on his own for months on end and is very much afraid. Eventually though, he finds his courage to carry on, renewed in his efforts to help the chief take on the Banished. The Weapon is a very interesting character, at first very curious and enthusiastic, ready to discover why she wasn't deleted. I can't really say I liked her at first, but eventually she grew on me as her interactions with the chief became more personal. The chief doesn't trust her at first, and you can't really blame him considering what happened with Cortana. However, you can tell the chief missed having an AI around, and she becomes invaluable to him during his journey across Zeta Halo. I often wondered if 343 could ever write a proper villain, and that time has finally come with Escharum and the Banished. Escharum is the Banished War Master overseeing the efforts on Zeta Halo. He's Atriox's mentor and acts as his will during the events of the game. During the game, he'll appear to antagonize Emperor Chief, calling him out, attempting to demoralize him as he's done with UNSC forces on the ring. He's older in his later years of his life and wants to fight the final fight of the ages. Moving over to gameplay, and for the vast majority of the game, you'll be spending your time running around Zeta Halo, a lush green environment inspired by the first Halo game. The gameplay area is quite large, segmented into chunks of floating islands of sorts. Because of something that happens during the story, a section of the ring is fractured, leaving you to get creative with your traversal at times. And I've got to say that exploring Zeta Halo has become a real treat. The setting has an excellent ambiance draped with greenery and mountain peaks. Occasionally you'll come across specks of wildlife, different forms of small birds to little gopher-like creatures. They do make the ring come to life at times, but it's a bit of a letdown from the space deer and rhino seen in the initial Halo Infinite trailer. Granted, they could be introduced later on in DLC, but you get my point. It just would have been cool to see some larger wildlife roaming around. The ring is also littered with foreigner structures of different sizes and shapes. There are various monuments and bases strung out throughout the world that hold some useful items, along with some secrets that you may find interesting should you choose to explore them. There are also networks of caves to traverse. You can find Marine squads taking shelter in them, along with weapon caches and much more. However, not everything in these caves is friendly. I actually wish we saw more of these cave systems, as they force you to approach enemies differently in tight, compact, close quarters spaces. While exploring the world, you'll come across various UNSC outposts that have been taken over by Banished forces. Once reclaimed, you'll get a group of Marines to occupy these bases, and you can also get your pilot buddy to drop in vehicles, provided you unlock them. Various vehicles and weapons can be spawned at these outposts, however, you're going to need to collect Valor to earn them. Valor is earned from liberating bases and saving Marine squads. Once you hit a certain Valor point objectives, you can unlock Warthogs, Scorpions, and even Wasps at your whim. It's a pretty nice feeling to plan out an attack on a Banished base and being able to choose your weapon loadout and what vehicles you want to bring to the party. Speaking of unlocks, over the course of the campaign you'll come across a few gadgets and abilities to help you along with your battles across Zeta Halo. The most popular being the Grapple Shot, a hook device that allows you to latch onto most surfaces, getting you into a better position, or a quick form of evasion. You can even grab weapons with it and latch onto enemies. It's become a fan favorite, and I can't say I blame anyone. It's a lot of fun to use traversing across Zeta Halo. I've heard comparisons to many other shooters such as Titanfall, but I don't think that's a fair judgment to make on one aspect of gameplay that you can switch out on the fly. Speaking of which, you also have the Threat Detector, which is a deployable sensor that can reveal cloaked enemies or ones that are hidden behind structures. It comes in handy every now and then. The Drop Wall, as the name implies, is a portable wall that can soak up a few shots when you're pinned down by enemy fire. Thrusters are a returning add-on, and they're very useful during your battles, allowing you to do quick dodges in the heat of a battle. The Repulsor is also good as it's able to deflect incoming fire back at enemies. All in all, some very useful gear at your disposal during your time in the campaign. However, I find that one ability seems to rule supreme, and that's the Grapple Shot because, well, it's just super useful in a variety of situations, and it's fun. All of these abilities can be upgraded. During your travels across the ring, you'll find boxes called Spartan Cores. Find one and it'll net you 1 point, and you can accumulate these during your travels across the ring. Another way to earn valor is to take down propaganda towers. They're scattered around the campaign map and have the grunts saying things to demoralize UNSC forces. I have to admit that I didn't really find them all that interesting. Sure, the grunts in the campaign are funny, but this is kind of overkill in my opinion with the kind of stuff that they're spewing out. I'm sure even the banished forces would get tired of hearing all the crap that's coming out of their mouths. During your travels, you'll stumble upon Molinear armor lockers. These locker boxes grant you special armor skins and emblems that can be used on your multiplayer Spartan. I'm a big fan of earning stuff in the campaign that transfers over to multiplayer. My one major gripe though is that the framing of it is an armor locker, and while you can earn coatings and emblems, no actual pieces of armor can be earned, which is a big letdown to say the least. There's a good variety of enemies to fight during your endeavors across Zeta Halo. The Banished contain the usual mix of grunts, jackals, hunters, elites, and brutes, and I have to say that it's a fun experience to fight against them. The lesser units aren't a problem, but the higher ranking brute captains and elites give you plenty of problems during your playthrough. I was also happy to see the return of skirmishers, the jackal subspecies last seen during Halo Reach. Allied with the Banished are new units called skimmers, hovering squid monkey things with jetpacks. They're usually armed with ranged weapons such as commandos or shock rifles. They appear to be the same species as a Harbinger, though they are proportionately different. I can't really say that I enjoyed coming up against this unit. Design-wise, they aren't very maneuverable, and you can take them out in a couple of shots. I would have much rather had drones come back, as they could actually fly around in large packs and really cause you to reconsider your strategy. You'll also encounter Forerunner constructs such as Sentinels. They're not very tough opponents unless they're in large groups with shields. Still though, I enjoy seeing them float around, especially just to bring to life Forerunner buildings. One of the big strengths to Halo Infinite is its weapons sandbox, with a large number of familiar and new weapons to play around with. The brute weapons really shine as they have a unique, menacing look to them, with fierce bayonets on them ready to impale any foe. The Mangler has become a favorite of mine, acting as a handy revolver. Even the newly introduced shock weapons, as they can take down shields and stall vehicles. Forerunner weapons have also seen a significant redesign, and all for the better in my opinion. The Heatwave comes as a replacement to the Scatter Shot. While its shots are weak, the shots are able to ricochet off the walls. It has an alternate fire mode which changes the disbursement of the shot, which comes in handy given the situation. The Cinder Shot is a newcomer to the weapons sandbox and acts as a grenade launcher of sorts. The advantage of it being you can actually manually guide the shots. I won't go over every single weapon, but needless to say there are some really nice new additions here. My one big gripe though is that there's no light machine gun. I'm surprised the Saw never got a spot in the game considering it was a well-liked weapon from the previous games, but maybe we'll see its addition further down the line. Overall, the game played pretty well. I can't say that I encountered any game-breaking bugs, visual glitches, and the like. Overall, it was just a very well-polished experience. Onto the visuals for the game, and it's a real looker in my opinion. There's tons of detail to character models, vehicles, weapons, and the like. The color palette is really striking, bringing back those traditional vibrant colors to the Halo series. The world of Zeta Halo is a stunner itself, from the forest to the mountains to Forerunner structures. The day-night cycle is also a nice touch. However, if I do have one criticism, I do wish that the night cycle was much darker, almost like in Halo 3 ODST, as it just feels too light right now in my opinion. It would be a lot cooler to sneak around in a pitch-black environment and have to use a visor mode to spot banished patrols. Again, just an idea. Either way, this game looks really good, and if you have an Xbox Series X, you're in for a really good looking game. I tell ya, this is a far cry from the initial gameplay reveal back in summer 2020, when we got our first look at Craig. Next over to the audio for Halo Infinite, and weapons have a solid sound to them, as well vehicles sound like something that you would actually drive. The voice acting is also quite strong, with Steve Downes retaining the iconic voice for the Master Chief, as well as many other fine performances from the cast all around. In particular, I really thought the pilot and Eshram were portrayed strong. I really have to tip my hat to TXR show friend Gareth Coker. Him, Curtis Schweitzer, and Joel Corlitz did a remarkable job on the game's soundtrack. Halo has always been defined by having an awesome musical score, and this one certainly delivers, striking a good balance between old themes while adding new touches to help create a memorable experience. A couple of my favorite tracks were Sequence, Heavy Artillery, Ransom Keep, Esherim, and The Road. Moving over to multiplayer, and it's quite an interesting bag. The Academy is a new addition. It introduces players to the mechanics of the game, from movement to basic combat. You can also engage in custom bot matches and test out weapons, equipment, and vehicles at your own pace. You're also introduced to Commander Lorette Agrina, a Spartan 4 overseeing the training of new Spartans. Overall, she's more likable than past 343 developed Spartan characters, more approachable than Palmer, and not a personality deadweight like Locke. They seem to have invested a lot in her, but overall her purpose is very minute in the grand scheme of the game. It's possible we could see her expanded upon, but her importance to other aspects of the game just don't seem to justify it. She's also featured as a voice caster for Big Team Battle. I'm not sure why they keep doing this, as Jeff Steitzer provides a voice for multiplayer in all previous Halo games, but it's kind of annoying. As with Palmer in Halo 5, it just feels misplaced and unnecessary. 343 have said that they're looking into adding Steitzer's voice dialogue into Big Team Battle, but who knows when that will be. On to the other heavy-hitting mode, matchmaking multiplayer. And what would a proper Halo game be without multiplayer? On the gameplay front, it doesn't disappoint. The movement speed feels perfectly paced with the maps. Combat situations are fun. Weapons, both old and new, have a purpose with dedicated roles that suit their battlefield prowess. It almost feels like the next evolution of Halo 3, and that's a very good thing. You're also introduced to AI companions that talk to you during your multiplayer matches. They give out commentary about what's going on in the multiplayer match. While some enjoy their banter, I can't help but feel a little annoyed by them, and I wish 343 would make an option just to out-opt of them entirely for multiplayer. The game launched with 10 multiplayer maps, and overall they're pretty good. They're a lot more memorable than Halo 5's. A few personal standouts for me are Streets, Aquarius, Deadlock, and Launch Site. I don't really think there's one that I necessarily dislike, but admittedly I would like to see more Big Team Battle maps. You've got awesome vehicles to control, but not too many vehicles are able to showcase themselves on the rather tightly spaced maps. The multiplayer modes are pretty standard, in fact I'd say even a little stale with the current offerings. While 343 Industries have stated that there are new modes and other things coming in the near future, there is no clear roadmap. For a free-to-play title to be successful, it's usually a good idea to show people what they're investing in your title, what you've got cooking up, and there really hasn't been any firm details given. Probably the most egregious aspect of the game is its storefront, an area where you can purchase armor and weapon skin bundles. Pretty standard fare for multiplayer titles these days, especially for free-to-plays. However, the prices listed just make your eyes pop out. I don't think this was entirely 343's decision, and I'm looking right at you here, Xbox Game Studios. For a division that has championed its consumer base in recent years and its inclusivity, yet decides to give a giant backhand to them with ridiculous prices. Even recently, after 343 said that they were listening to the fan base, they offer a $20 Mr. Chief bundle. Yes, the same Mr. Chief that lambasted us about Halo 5 Rex back in the day. Not exactly a good look there. The studio needs to take a look at what other free-to-play games have done right, and emulate the strengths of those systems in order to make this one work. I do realize that this is a big experiment for a major AAA title, but better things could have been implemented. As for the length of my playtime, well, the campaign clocked in at about 20 hours in the heroic difficulty. This is without finishing all the outposts or bases. You could probably skim through the main story points within about 9 to 10 hours, but I like to explore and mess around with the environment. Naturally, time in the multiplayer varies depending on the player, but I've already put many hours into the beta alone, and I can see myself racking up many hours in the matchmaking. So with all that said, I'm going to move over and summarize all the good and the bad for the game. Starting off with the good. The focus coming back onto the Master Chief story, it's a lot easier to follow and brings back what most fans wanted. The introduction to the Banished brings a strong enemy force into the mix. They have an interesting story brought forth originally from Halo Wars 2, and have many cool facets to them. Esherim is a fascinating character, along with a few other high-value targets. The weapon sandbox is a lot of fun. There's a lot of variety from the UNSC, Banished, and Forerunner weapons. New weapons like the Mangler, shot grenades, and Cinder Shot really shine. As well, old weapons such as a Sentinel Beam find new life. The world of Zeta Halo is a pleasure to explore. There's many hidden treasures, many spots for you to look around, and the environment in general is just really nice. One could argue that it's only one forest biome, but I still really like it. The musical score is very strong, harkening back to the days of Marty O'Donnell while introducing new themes that feel refreshing. Continuing with that, the overall audio is strong, weapons sound great, the voice acting is really superb, vehicles sound as they should. There's a lot of really nice touches present here. The multiplayer has a lot of strong fundamentals, the Halo formula works well and has been improved upon in some aspects, as well a lot of the maps are quite fun to play on. The Academy is a useful tool for new and old players alike to practice, whether that be trying out new weapons and ranges or testing out strategies on maps and bot matches. Next to the bad aspects of the game, the top one is probably the storefront. The prices are just outrageous for what they are, and in a lot of ways just feel like a cash grab. Related to the store, armor customization is severely restricted with the core system. Why colors have to be restricted to specific cores is baffling, especially when you see bots having mixed and matched armor and colors is kind of infuriating. Please fix this, 343. The propaganda towers feel unnecessary and like padding. The Atriox towers are way more interesting and actually have something of value to offer in comparison. Mjolnir armor lockers don't actually contain any armor. Maybe this is minor to some, but there should have been at least some armor found in these, especially when in the past Halo games you could actually unlock armor pieces. Some high-value targets are rather underwhelming. While for the most part they're very cool, some felt kinda half-baked. Some of the grunt ones just didn't feel too proper and were too easy. And if I'm to be completely honest, while I did like the weapon personality-wise, I wish that she had a more unique design overall. AIs are known for having unique looks to them. Roland and a few others from the books come to mind. I hope that she's able to choose a new look for her going forward because the UNSC uniform just makes her look a bit, well, plain in my opinion. Overall, I'm giving Halo Infinite a score of 8 out of 10. Halo Infinite is an interesting press position to the Halo fanbase. It's a massive pivot from the last game and a shift that seems more in line with traditional Halo. It respects the Master Chief and attempts to correct past mistakes, giving some much needed closure to some plot points while opening up other story possibilities for the future. There are signs that big chunks of content were cut in order to make deadlines, and while I did enjoy the campaign very much so, there were teases in older trailers that hinted at much more to offer. Granted, these can be explored in future DLC, it must be said that the initial scale was much larger in scope. The campaign itself is a fun ride, and the multiplayer is fundamentally a solid shooter experience. The core mechanics work well, and the maps are overall pretty good. It just needs more content in the form of playlists, some more maps, and maybe even a UI overhaul. As earlier stated, the storefront really needs to see fundamental changes if they want players to stick around because things are not so well there. In a nutshell, Halo Infinite is a rediscovery of Halo's roots, focusing on the strong Halo fundamentals while adding and experimenting to the overall experience in some soft ways. In a year where other big-name titles have decisively struggled, Halo Infinite rises above them. I truly do believe that 343 Industries wanted to make a great Halo game, and there are certainly signs of that, but it's in no way perfect. With that being said, I'm looking forward to the future of the franchise. If they can correct some major complaints in the coming months, then this game could become a very memorable experience to this generation. Whew, that took a lot longer than I initially thought, but I had a lot to go over with you guys and a lot on my mind. If you happen to enjoy this review, then consider leaving a like, subbing to the channel, and sharing this out across social media platforms, as it does help me immensely. It's always great having you all here, stopping by and checking out my content. Until next time everyone, Invader, out.